Welcome everyone. Glad you can come along for the second part of our three-part series. Last week we talked about POS and retail management. Now we're going to transfer discussion to the back of the stores where everybody in the thrift industry knows that the magic happens and the money is made. And so I'll be your primary presenter today. We have a panel of three experts: Darlene McQueen from Retail Control Systems and David Engel from Upright Labs. Just a bit on my background if you missed the last seminar. I've been around IT management for 35 years, unfortunately, I guess. But the last 17 have been a good ride working in the thrift industry. For a decade, I led IT system development and operations management for the world's largest for-profit thrift operator. And then for just short of 3 years, I was the CIO for a very large Phoenix Goodwill that has the largest footprint in the Goodwill family in terms of retail operations. And then in between, I have started a consulting group called Top Management Group. It's thrift, retail, IT optimization, and pretty much a one-man show. I do bring in subs every once in a while for special purposes, but have had a number of for-profit and Goodwill and nonprofit clients, and I'm glad to share what I know about the back-to-store processes. I guess I'll throw it over to Darlene now so she can tell you her background.
Great, thanks, John. So my name is Darlene McQueen. I know a few of you on this call. I recognize from the list. So I am an account manager at RCS and a software solution advisor. So I have been with RCS for more than 10 years. I think I was just reminded last month. We specialize in point of sale technology. Today we work with roughly about 26 Goodwill organizations across the US and several other thrift organizations as well. So I'll throw it over to Dave.
Awesome. Good afternoon, everyone. For those who didn't meet me last time, I'm David Engel, the co-founder and CEO of Upright Labs. Upright works over 3,000 retail stores, about 70 to 75 Goodwills across the US, utilize Upright Lister to streamline their e-commerce operation. And so on the next session next week, we're going to be talking about how you can automate your e-commerce operation, how you can reduce touch points, and we're also going to talk about buy online, pick up in store, how you can list items from in-store, generate traffic online, and bring more foot traffic into your store location. So we'll dive into that next week. I'm excited for John's presentation today.
Thanks, David. So here are the topics we're going to be discussing today. Primarily two large areas. One is pricing and production, and the second one is inventory control from raw materials, credential, and various classifications, backstock, recycled products, and the like. So I wanted to start off with some questions that I've developed over my years in this industry and that I use with my clients, kind of get a gauge on the maturity level and how their processes and systems are performing. So I won't go through all these, but they're a good gauge for how you get the best practices around pricing, handling your raw materials, your sales flow rotation. So some of these relate back to the retail front end, but it all comes together with the data essentially. And if you can have good control and good visibility of your donation, your sourcing operations, how you're handling the first material that comes in, and then how it's getting processed effectively, priced accurately, managed well on the floor, and then along the way collect data from those sales and production processes so you can have the key metrics that you need to run your business and develop plans around those processes with the metrics that support those plans. where I'm seeing the most successful operators in this business beginning to function. Nobody's really achieved all these goals, but everybody is striving towards it. And some of the solutions that examples I'll show you hopefully can give you some interest in other things you can possibly do to make the same level of improvement. So the first thing we're going to talk about is actual barcoding of your product and how to ticket it. And so in general, there's been some work from the POS providers around doing this better. Most of them have been somewhat constrained by their solutions that they're really designed for mainstream retail. And they have receiving modules that have been modified or workarounds within them to try and do it, but they're not quite as efficient as what you can do if you build it yourself. So the first of these solutions I saw came out, and I was a part of that development way back when, was in the mid 2000s, and they've evolved since then. Some of the software vendors are getting really good with them. Some still are relying on their customers to create their own solution, or for example, RCS has decided to integrate with the Goodwill that I work for, because they have a very strong product and are marketing it at this point. And so there's definitely some capabilities there. So what they're really involved in is having necessarily a touchscreen computer. I'm seeing a lot more tablets out on the floor now, which is very nice because they're much less expensive and you can spread them to more of your processing stations. A lot of deployments of these systems I'm seeing are primarily in textiles. So you usually have a men's and women's workstation doing the pricing there. But they're all involved with 2D barcoding. You need 2D barcoding to capture all the data that's required, scanner to manage tickets once they're produced. And you can see the list of software features. You definitely need to control who the ticketing person is. They manage your wheat colors for you. You can put product sources in to capture information about how well your donation sources are performing, and they do very efficient hierarchy movement. They're pretty small applications, usually just around 5 screens, and I'll give you a mock-up of those soon. The systems also should handle whatever level of pricing you want to do, however complicated, and the more complicated it gets, the more data you get. You need to find your sweet spot for how far along you are with training your pricing or graders. So many start off with just doing unit pricing, which is essentially every item in the category on the rack gets the same price. Evolved to showing multiple prices to pricers, sometimes add a better quality feature to that, so that if you have a really extremely valuable item, a manager can price that at a higher price. And then you get into more of grading methodologies. A standard one that gives you 3 possible price points just based on quality is good, better, best. And then one that most of my for-profit clients have migrated to is a 2-step condition and quality grading process, where we can capture up to potentially 9 price points for an item, and do very strong training around standards that would put each of that individual items into that condition or quality bucket. Data capture, I won't read through all those, but the systems, if they're going to give you all the information you need, should handle these. And I'll show you some mock-ups that will pull those out. So I just wanted to throw this up really quick. Through my experience in doing a couple, actually 3 selections of POS and a number of custom development solutions, there are requirements. This is just the start of the screen, so these can be available as needed. They're produced in RFPs already. And if anybody wants to talk about any of the features that are described here, feel free to contact me. So this is a very rudimentary Excel-based mock-up. This is courtesy of the project I just did with the Goodwill Industries of Central Oklahoma. So thanks to them for letting me collaborate on this. And in the spirit of us not pushing any particular product, I decided not to show any actual screens of commercial products, but this will give you a sense of just what the features and functions are. So this is a standard log-on screen, but you definitely need to capture the operator so you know who is actually doing your pricing and grading. Then there's a second screen that allows you to put in some data that will persist throughout the session. Primary one being donation source. You want to be able to tie sales performance back to like a bin route or a home pickup territory or your OSD, particular attended donation station, for example. And then you can also switch tag color here with the manager password on the occasion that you need to reprint tags. There's also a feature at this level of the system that allows you to delete tags. As I mentioned, a lot of Goodwills in particular won't deploy these systems to their shoes and books and other side departments. So they pre-print tags at the start of the morning in different price points and then use those up throughout the day. But each of those tags that's printed, the system thinks is an actual inventory item that's been put on the sales floor. So you definitely have to have a mechanism for deleting all those out. And best practice there has been a barcode scanner attached to your workstation. You can just bring it back, go into delete mode, and scan through those. So the next two screens are simple navigation screens that get you down to where you want to be, where you can price. And so you can see easily this is just a screen where you select the department, and there's no other functionality here. If you select women's, it'll take you into all the women's categories and back arrows, so you can go up and down and navigate top to bottom throughout your departments and categories. And then to an actual pricing screen, when we selected short sleeve blouses, here's what an example of a unit price screen could be. In this particular instance, the company decided not to show prices or show the price that they would be putting on each of the items in this category, but instead just put out the sizes. And when you hit a size, it'll print. You can associate different prices with these sizes. For example, plus is often priced a little bit higher. And then the specials button, that would be again for high value items that a manager would come by later and price. Just a couple of other small features. Should be able to toggle off from hang tag to label depending on what you need. You can go into reprint mode, which defaults to off, but if you need to reprint the last tag you printed, that's a strong feature that's used pretty often. The sizes too are configurable by category. So for example, in men's jeans, you'd have waist sizes. In t-shirts, you'd have extra large, medium, for example, like this. Quantity is used by to print mass tickets. If you don't have a ticketing machine in your side departments, the number of pieces is used to do a set, like a 3-piece suit or a set of dishes or table and chairs, for example. And that'll produce the same barcode, so it has all the same information in it. But only the first of those barcodes will have the barcode on it. So the first of those tickets is actually scannable. Moving to that next level of pricing or grading, this is an example of a good, better, best screen. And you could take intermediate steps, as I said before, to list individual pricing with the best quality as well. But essentially, this will give you a chance to differentiate between your products just on a quality only basis from good, better, best. So you can have 3 different price points plus any you want to put on that are differentiators for larger product or your specials button, which is free form. The system should enforce things like not letting specials be less than your best plus size, for example. That wouldn't make sense to price something lower than that. And finally, this is cloth grading. So assessment based on both condition and quality and all the same features beyond that. This does give you, 9 potential price points and a lot better differentiation, which I'll show next on what your products really are that are going to the floor. So like I mentioned, what is grading? It's much less subjective. You're actually training your graders to do a common process, to know what attributes for an item. We'll put it into each of the quality and each of the condition buckets. And then it lets you differentiate better with the 9 price points. I think the biggest value of grading is in value pricing. And the customers get it. It meets their needs across the spectrum of prices too. So you have a value-based buyer that needs to find a low price point. You won't be overpricing items and potentially having them not be sold to that shopper. And then on the other hand, you won't be underpricing your highest value items either. So there's really an opportunity to meet the customer at their own individual need level and give each item the highest opportunity of being sold. The second feature of grading that makes it really powerful is all the data you can get on how your categories are performing, even to the price point level. And then you can, behind the scenes where the prices are maintained, you can strategically and tactically or surgically adjust certain price points and test the reaction of how the sell-through and revenue would change, and continually make small adjustments and test those and see just where the customer's elasticity of demand level is met best. Finally, gives you better, more consistent training. A grader doesn't have to recognize price points. They just need to continue to do their same process that they've been brought up with and reinforced constantly, and let the prices dictate themselves. And then from the donation, it just lets you see where you're getting more of your higher quality and better condition items, and you can adjust some of your sourcing patterns based on that. So here again are all the metrics that you want to capture with the solution. The ones that come from the production side are shown there. Everything you would get off your production workstation. When it runs through point of sale, you pick up the sales side of the item, date, time sold, what was the sales price, location, customer name, employee, and customer if you have the loyalty program turned on. And then the insights you can see here: time on the floor, sell through the item level, sell through by processor, sell through by donation source, and product on floor. I thought I'd show some of the reports and information you can get to manage your ticketing operation real time. So a lot of the older Thrift operators maintain tally sheets manually. You can actually put those on the workstation. So anyway, where I was saying you can actually show those tally sheets now locally on your workstation. And I have some clients that have actually put up large whiteboards that keep track and make it visible across the production floor. You can do production summary reports at the store level, daily production reports, the example data you see here. And then a real valuable tool that I see a lot of the better Thrift operators using is a visual report that shows if your pricing kind of the bell curve of your price ranges, with the higher ones being the more middle normal prices. Or if you're grading a 3-hump bell curve, which is what you'd expect a normal distribution of items into those grades would fall. And you can get down to, you show that visually as a graph, overlay it with what the store total performance is, also overlay that with what each individual grader grader or pricer's results are, and then track the deltas or the deviations from that standard. And it's been shown over and over again that you can train to get all your graders, all your pricers performing like the best, that gears into various areas of inventory management in the back of the store, and the best practice I'm seeing there. Here, there's a big difference between the for-profit world and the nonprofit operators. In the OSD area, where a Goodwill, for example, will receive upwards of 80% of the product right to the store, they tend to do more subcategory or sub-raw material category sorts that you see here: men's, women's, linen, shoes, electronics, for example. Most of the for-profit thrifts, you don't have the advantage of that high on-site delivery rate, and more is coming from delivered from either from a nonprofit partner on truck, or trucks running bin routes or home pickup routes. They don't do as much touching of the product when it comes off the truck. It's usually a sort either just into hard and soft, and those go onto big carts that contain those, and those are delivered as is to the production station. What I've showed here is just a tool that you can help to maintain your product on hand inventory. I'm hearing more and more that everybody's trying to get the just-in-time inventory. There's a lot of donations available now, which is a great thing. So getting down to 1 or 2 days on hand hasn't been as easy as everybody would hope it would be. But that's still the goal everybody's striving to. But people are managing their product in hand. Of course, you need to do that so that you can either supplement product, your transportation, warehousing, and sourcing department can see what you actually physically have in the store in terms of raw materials that still could be processed. So a lot of emphasis, especially in the for-profits, on product on hand measurement. Most are moving to weight, although some still are doing it by a container count basis. But regardless, here's a quick tool that I thought I'd show that some are using to help make sure they get it right. And so it's essentially just breaking it out between soft, hard. Usually they pull books out because they're heavy and skew your hard pounds, and then take out furniture and large items. And then at the end of the day, they'll do a physical inventory and then compare what the calculated inventory was to that, and the cost for the product to go. So your today's beginning inventory plus anything you receive, plus or minus anything you transfer, plus what you process, should be what you have. And so if there's deltas to that, then there's either an issue with your physical count or your control of your movements of inventory and getting that information accurately entered into a system. And they do it, if you're weighing it, you do it the same way. You just enter the pounds instead of the container counts. What more and more of my clients have started to do, though, is eliminate that entire process through barcoding. And here you're using similar, most of them are turning into tablet-based solutions for creating containers, either deal or bin or a cart. And in the first place, so you know what it is. It's got its own identifier and it's got its tear weight built into the barcode. Then you manage the status of those containers through a process of it's either empty, it's been loaded and it's in product on hand staging, it's been moved to an overstock or backstock location, it's in production being worked, or it's being transferred between stores or store and central processing. And then, so when you weigh it, you're actually getting the weight of the inventory that's in it, and it can be different types of inventory, either straight credential, or if you're making a backstock, or even a finished good item, you can create a box of that as well. And then the process is essentially the same for each of those. The scales they're using are integrated with the application so that the weight comes across automatically and pre-fills that field. The tear weight's picked up from the container identifier, and then you print another barcode that goes with the item that it shows usually the weight and the date that container was produced. Some have pretty specific locations so they can barcode and scan those. Most use bigger areas, not controlling it quite that precisely, but depending on if it's a finished good or if it's actually a raw material cart. So here's just a picture of one of my clients' solutions. You can see the tablet-based PC, and that's the barcode printer. It's integrated with the scale, so that's how they create their containers and bales. This would be a large cloth cart that's just been received. This is the donation source, or probably the truck route that it came from. Number of pounds that's actually in the product. And then again, that would be one that's moving the product on hand and then eventually to the production station. Here's just a shot of the scales. These are pretty typical, made so you can roll your product carts right up on them, or take a pallet fork and drop a gaylord or other kinds of containers on them. For shipping the backstock, you can use these same type of systems to manually or to maintain your backstock. This is pretty common practice for those operators that are, across multiple geographic climates, and it's pretty consistent process. It's fairly well known. You're going to put away winter coats in the summer and pull them out in the winter, and opposite pull out, put them in shorts in the winter and put them away or the opposite, put them away in the winter and pull them out in the summertime. One best practice here is to actually create goals for building up those categories, so you can watch your stores producing them throughout the one season and pulling them out during the other, and track for that. I've seen it mostly done either by the sorter themselves or in the back of the sorting table, and hangers will do it. And but I'm not seeing it being ticketed any longer. It's stopped at these backstock categories like men's winter coats or holiday, like for example, Halloween or Christmas, and then packed up as sorted raw material, but not barcoded. So you do the data entry similar to what you do for any other type of inventory item. Just to note that everybody puts out some of the out-of-season product always, so that you can ensure your customers know that you do have those kind of items, even though they're smaller quantity in the off-season. So they'll come back during the season when you're going to be full of that. Perform summer and winter and fall, summer, spring, fall, winter 4 flips, so that you're merchandising correctly. And then you can use the donation source on your ticketing machine to enter that this is actually coming out of your backstock inventory, so you can manage and see the impact of your backstocking program on your total sales. So here's a pic of a client's backstock operation. See this very simple collection bins under the sorting table. As these get filled, they're transferred to a larger box or even a Gaylord, and then they use their inventory control system to create that backstock item and move it to whatever warehouse they're going to store them. It will shift to central processing some. Hot topic, not a lot of activity that I've seen. Pretty limited. I've seen many experiments with central processing that don't fully come to fruition. I do know of one very large for-profit operator that's making a large investment in it currently. But it does make more sense for profit, since it doesn't make a lot of sense for Goodwills and other nonprofits with the high OSD rate to move items back to a central warehouse and then back to the stores. But I have seen some pretty effective operations not doing full central processing, but sorting to a department level or a predefined pre-sort category, and then tracking what's going on in stores by their product on hand and what they're selling through the registers in terms of departments and categories, and doing replenishment by that method. And again, the inventory control systems in some cases are used to do that replenishment, or there's a lot of manual and spreadsheet tools that are used for this as well. So here's just a shot of a couple different particular pre-sort categories. So the ladies' tops, this will be done centrally, and kids pre-sort as well. And this one looks like it's full, so it should be ready to be pulled out and run through the barcoding solution, so that you get a weight on it, you know what it is, and be ready to put in inventory or transfer it to a store. So I've seen more and more for-profit, primarily operators, getting into doing some recycling programs, not just selling mixed rags. Kind of best practices I've seen there are keeping your drops and your as-is separate, or your pulls and your as-is separate, and creating items of those and transferring those through the inventory control system back to the central warehouse. In the warehouse, mostly are still make to stock. They're doing, sorts into various categories like wipers and tropical and polo, and a number of different items that the recycling market is interested in. Some have gone to make to order, where they've got relationships with recycling customers that they know exactly what mix they want, and they'll get a sales order for that and create the product to it. Again, they use the same inventory control system to serialize it, barcode it, create the type and weight. And then what I'm seeing more and more is not custom development for actual fulfillment, but integration at this point between when those recycled inventory items are created, and they integrate with an ERP system, and the ERP system actually does the warehousing, any purchase order / sales order that comes in, the pick, pack, and ship, invoicing in AR, for example. And here's the example of I think this is a 16 barrel sort, still very manual. I'd be remiss if I did talk a little bit about sourcing solutions and what I'm seeing there. In terms of on-site deliveries and ASDs, still not a lot of automation, mostly still manual tallies and not differentiating between a single item that was delivered and a truckload of items. I do know that some of the POS vendors are trying to make efforts here, and I'll talk about those in just a second. BINS programs, a lot of custom work here too. There are a couple off-the-shelf products that are coming on board. The home pickup, whether it's from mail programs or call center, there's tons of call center solutions out there. So no need to reinvent the wheel there. And then the transportation management solutions are becoming more and more capable too, with being able to build truck routes and manage the routes and use geofencing, for example, to make sure they're not going to places they shouldn't go, and camera integration, so you can take pictures of what the bin looks like as you're collecting product, or what the home pickup site, the quality of the donation, those kind of things. So a lot of great new solutions there. On this donor information, not actually donation information, there's some work being done by some of the vendors along letting a donor identify himself, and that can go into your loyalty program or your donor tracking system, and self-service for actually entering what they donated. But those are mostly for tax and your tax purposes. There is announcements just recently by another POS vendor. That's an interesting concept of actually barcoding actual donations at the back door, and then carrying that information all the way through the donation station, so you can track sales performance to an actual donor and what they brought in. So really interesting concept. All of these, including that one, could be integrated with the inventory control package by just passing it along the scale, so you're not losing the quantity of items going in, or quantity of the weight of items going in. But I'm going to close, and I won't go through all of these, but just to show you the value of doing a well-developed ticketing system and a well-developed inventory control system. There's usually a set of reports and metrics around full store level. As I mentioned before, you can enter your budgets and try and break those down to a daily basis, so that you can really see, year over year and against budget, all the high-level retail metrics on how your stores are performing. At the category performance is really the same thing. You can drill down into the price points and see, what items sell through and put out was like, and what your core inventory is exactly, and how many days it takes items to sell, so that you can think about altering your rag off process, or changing linear feet that are dedicated to certain categories based on how much value they're providing. We've talked quite a bit about raw material yields and how important they are, especially in the for-profit world, where they really operate as low margin. You really want to maintain that high manufacturing best practice there, in terms of getting every bit you want out of the pounds of material that you're taking to the donation table. Track it real close to make sure that you're not going through too much product or creaming, or not digging too deep into the product, and putting out items that may not pass the condition filter. Labor efficiencies by logging into the workstations, and I do have some clients that are actually logging in and out of actual work functions, so they can keep track of metrics against like a roller racker, and how often they're getting to the floor and how long it's taken them. But the biggest metrics are your items put out per production labor hour and items sold per retail labor hour. Inventory control metrics are, from the systems I've just described, are really created kind of on the fly and read more real time. So you can see if a sorting table is producing, the right amount of items, the right amount of pounds they're taking off it, including weighing their trash, and making sure that those transactions are being reported. On the retail floor, in terms of inventory control, almost all of my for-profit clients have moved to actually scanning their rag-offs. They're getting a lot of value from seeing what's not selling and trying to get to that true shrink number and managing the write-off of that. That's what this period weekend accounting snapshot is all about. It's some best practices around, okay, the store reports that I have officially finished doing all my polls of that color for that week, and they can take a snapshot of it, and then it compares to what the system thinks is actually there. So it's kind of like a blind register countdown. They do a blind polls, and then the system, because it knows exactly when that item is put out, it can show you what still should be on your sales floor. And then the accounting department get involved with, are we going to take that right down, or are we going to dig deeper into making sure we've actually completed all our polls properly. And one client's even scanning the lease tags that they find on the floor just to get a better handle if it's higher or lower in one store or over another. Not a lot of labor involved in doing any of these. In fact, some of the scanning is being done right on the sales floor with small handheld devices, kind of like ring scanners attached to a tablet. And so you can just walk down as you pull items and put them on a rolling rack, you can just scan right through those quickly. And I know that at least one Goodwill is experimenting with RFID tags, which makes this process very, very easy. Salesforce allocations I've talked about a little bit before, but you can really see your category sales by how many feet you've allocated to it, and your sell through as well, and make decisions based on that. And then finally, I won't get into the details here because this is the subject of next week's topic, but see that clients that are doing e-com, kind of the key features that are important to them, the stores have build visibility into items that donated. Of course, within the e-com group, that you have your efficiencies and ways to manage those. You can allocate revenue back to stores, and seeing more and more migration towards selling items, e-com items actually out of the stores. So I'm sure that'll be a large topic for next week. And with that is all the material I have. I will open things up for questions and bring the rest of the panel back on board if they can help me with any of those and wrap up.
Thanks, John. A lot of great information there. We have a couple questions that have come through here. I'm not sure, this might be for Darlene or it might be inventory management, but Michael would like to know, is there a way to report when an item sells who priced that item?
Yeah, absolutely. That it's done by pricer login to the ticketing machine, and that is embedded in the barcode and carried through the sales floor all the way to the register.
Okay, great. Michael says thank you. Tony would like to know, in today's labor market or lack thereof, how do you get an ROI with centralized processing versus keeping it in location and touching it once? Each touch adds cost and reduces value.
I think that is the huge question. I mean, one of the rationale for doing central processing is economies of scale by doing a large process as opposed to a distributed process. But for the transportation costs, usually is what I see as the Achilles heel. It costs you too much to move it back and forth. especially if you're getting most of your product at your stores already. It's a dilemma, but of course, you know, the store labor is a huge component as well, especially with minimum wage considerations. So more we can do to be efficient in the stores, I think that's the direction. I do believe some large for-profits will do more central processing, but I think you'll see it more in that world because they are running more trucks. They are collecting and distributing more, so it's easier for them to send it to a central location. But I'm not sure you'll see a lot going all the way to producing floor-ready inventory. I think it's going to be more of a hybrid where you're doing, you know, some of the work. I know some of the pre-sort works I've seen done centrally is only because of the overabundance of product, and so some of my clients aren't taking all the product in the store; they're actually moving that back to a central location where it can be pre-sorted into that women's tops, kids, you know, men's bottom kind of level, and then redistribute to the stores as needed. But it's a thorny issue, and it has been in this industry for years.
Great. And then one more question. Does this production method track individual production?
Not sure I understand the question. Individual producers or each item that's produced? The answer is both. Yeah, the best solutions have gotten away from having a SKU, which is, you know, a number of items that are with an inventory quantity, and it's gone to unique barcoding. So each item has its own custom identifier, and it gets passed to central databases for processing along with the sales information once it's sold or once it's scanned off. And so by that sense, it's definitely individual item.
So yeah, it looks like he followed up and said each producer.
Yeah, and yeah, each producer for sure can be captured.
Okay. Are there any further questions? Not seeing anything come through. A reminder, next Tuesday at the same time, David Engel will be talking about e-commerce as it relates to Thrift. So please join us for that. And same panel will be here as well. So we look forward to seeing you then. If you have any further questions, please reach out. I think, John, do you have one more slide with everybody's contact info?
There it is.
There we go. So reach out to John or Darlene or David, and we can answer your questions for you. Thank you very much, everyone.
Yep.
Have a good Tuesday.
Helpful.
Bye.
Thanks all.